got the basics covered: emails, events, newsletters, social media posts. But if that were enough, every association would have sky-high engagement, right? The real challenge isn't just putting content out there, it's making it stand out, making it interactive, and making it work for today's members. So what does that look like? That's exactly what we're diving into today. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Association Amplified podcast. This is a show where we break down the biggest challenge associations face today, bridging the member value gap. Today we're diving into creative approaches to member engagement, what formats actually work, how to tailor content with different member segments, and why engagement starts with a solid strategy. All right, today joining me is Breanna Perrelli, our creative program and project producer here at Worker Bee TV. Welcome back to the show, Breanna.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really excited to talk about our topic for today. I know it's something that you live and breathe as the program and project producer here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We get asked this all the time. And sometimes associations will even say things like, oh, what's the point in making content? Like we make it and nobody looks at it. Are we sure they even want it? They'll say things like that. Like, why are we putting our resources into this? And it's something, we come up against all the time.
Yeah, that's one that I hear every now and then. Usually it's from someone that doesn't necessarily have a strong influence, or, well, influence is a good word for the programming that is really designed to add value to membership. The funny thing about that perspective is that if I was going to tell you that there's going to be more information being delivered to your members that is designed around the things that they're most impacted from or interested in, that's going to be a minus or a plus. Like, where are you going to put your chips? It doesn't really make much sense to me that trying to put time and effort to deliver things that are important to members and are designed to not only provide insights into the things that matter to them, but actually maybe address some of the things that are problematic in their companies or in their professional life, that's not only going to add to the value proposition of membership.
That's true. No, you can never go wrong by trying to create value for the member. And the right decision is never to scale back and create less value.
Yeah. And especially with the position that the association should be striving to sit in, which is, hey, we're the authoritative source for our industry. So if you're not the one proactively trying to provide the information, well, how can you be the authority in your space while you kind of sit quietly in the room, while the party's happening out, So,
that meme where it's like a guy standing in the corner, he's like, they don't know I'm the voice of the industry.
Yeah, we don't want to be the quiet one at the party, right? We want to be the center of attention, because if we don't facilitate that, our members are going to find those conversations elsewhere, right? And at the very worst, they're going to look at the cost of membership and they're going to be thinking about, okay, is this really the best use of my money?
Yeah. No, you should never stop trying to lead the discussion. Just figure out what's not working and adjust it, rather than being like, oh, they didn't want me here.
So on that note, I think a great place for us to kick off is really around, well, it's kind of in line with what we were saying, is thinking about those folks that are trying to create good programming for their members digitally. So creating content and delivering it online. And I feel like every association's kind of like in a different position, different stage, if you will, and they're thinking around this as well as what they're actively doing. And I often describe this moment in time for many associations as kind of like when the internet was still fairly young and social media was still coming into fruition, and everyone kind of felt like they needed a website, but it's like no one had an understanding of what a website should be. And then social media happened, and every company was like, oh, well, this is big enough that we should probably have an account, but no one really knew what to do with it. Well, when it comes to creating content and delivering quality programming, seeing the association seeing itself as part of its role in delivering value is creating programming and delivering that online. We know content's a thing. Everyone's producing content, everyone's consuming content like never before, but like what's our role in that? It ends up kind of being a little bit of a disjointed view of really what content should be and how we should do it. So I'm looking forward to unpacking that with you today. Because ultimately, the symptom of all that is something like, well, we've created a webinar that happens, maybe bi-weekly, monthly. We have a podcast. And, it's like a couple people in the association are responsible for a couple of those pieces. It's not really brought in or thought of as actually a strategic part of the association's value proposition, meaning it actually doesn't really necessarily part of the strategic planning. It's not really conceptualized as, okay, this is, as far as our annual plan goes, this is the programming that's going to line up with the events and all the other initiatives that we have for members, and how do we optimize this? What it ends up looking like is that podcasts tend to suffer from engagement. The webinar, they tend to suffer for engagement. And then the association is also battling, well, should we be trying to do these things in places where members already are? And that kind of seems like almost like the obvious choice. It's like, well, everyone's on YouTube or everyone's on LinkedIn. Like, why don't we just make content and put it where they are, right? Like, why are we going to try and make them conform to us? Which, like, if you were a company, I think actually there'd be some logic in there. But of course, associations being membership-based organizations, the thought process ends up getting a little bit hazy on how they should be delivering it. Perhaps the best place to start here is really just thinking about, hey, we have these symptoms, which is like low engagement. We're dipping our toes into the water. Maybe we think we're doing a really good job of creating content and delivering thoughtful programming. We're just not seeing the results. Do our members want this? Ends up being one of those questions that folks ask themselves, right? Or the whole organization. So yeah, I'm wondering on what your thoughts are in terms of what are those things that folks should be keeping into consideration when they're developing their programming or assessing where they are in their journey.
Yeah, I think your example of early internet culture, I guess, is the perfect example for where most associations are in their digital transformation journey, like when how it pertains to content strategy. So we're at the stage where most associations are like, we figured out that we need stuff, and we know it's got to be good stuff, right? So they got their stuff, and they've made sure to inject like quality, like they're delivering on good talking points, like they have like good people participating in it. They've added like a certain amount of production value, and then they're like, oh shoot, no one's looking at it. Now, what could be the problem, right? So for associations that are in that stage, we kind of see, I guess, a few main problems that could be either one of these things or all of these things could be what's creating this issue. So one, this is the first time ever we have so many generations in the workforce. So we got like Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, and boomers are all working together, and they have like wildly different expectations for what kind of content they're interested in engaging with. I don't know if this is going to make the cut, but I got into an argument with my mom last night because we were doing a shower invitation for my sister's wedding, and she was saying, do we know where she's registered to put this on the invitation? And I was saying, I have a link to her digital registry. Don't worry, I have the link. And she's like, but where is she registered? And I was like, at the link, I have it. And I completely forgot that at some point in time, I myself used to like go to Bed Bath & Beyond and be like, ooh, Gemina is like, is registered here. Like, let me see what gifts she wants. And just in a few years, that completely turned on its head. And I haven't gone to a place to get a bridal registry in like, I don't know, like at least 5 years. And it completely left my mind that was ever a thing that happened. And we just laughed for like 15 minutes after that.
No, I mean, I think that's actually a good example of how quickly people's behaviors and expectations can change just by like little, even just a few degrees adjustment in terms of using technology, right? To make things, in this case, make things more convenient for everyone. Cause yeah, I mean, who's got time to go down to the Bed Bath and Beyond and be like, oh yeah, my friend has registered here. No one's got time for that, right? Where you can just click a link, scroll through, and find something that they'll really enjoy.
Yeah, and then they turn the book around and like it's like a written entry. It's like she wants a blender or whatever. Like just the experience. I'm just tired thinking about it. Please no. But right. So I guess in that vein, every generation, and my mom, who is a boomer, she's not retired, like, so she has like expectations like that, right? That are very different from my expectations as a millennial. So we got to be catering to both of those generations. Well, actually, all of them. But in this case, those are two like very wildly different expectations.
Not to say that all boomers are gonna like stuck in the past or something.
They're like,
like
where's
this.
my physical registry? Yeah, not to, like categorically say that they all have these expectations and Gen Z's all like these things, but that's just an example of the breadth of expectations that you might encounter. So similarly to what you were saying about early internet and where we are in terms of content strategy, a lot of associations are still thinking about content like TV, like broadcast, like here is our message, and then like everyone sees the same thing, right? And today, the things that are getting the most engagement are usually two-way conversations that are kind of that trend is being set by social media, right? A more interactive and personalized way of receiving content rather than here are like the key things we've made, and then like choose to interact as you see fit. And then also another thing that is a holdover from the broadcast era is expect that everyone's seeing the content that you've made. So just kind of that broadcasting singular mindset versus a more distributed interactive content model.
This is actually an important point, is that if someone is out there trying to create good online programming, if you take a sit back and you look at what you're doing and it's not being developed and distributed in a way that makes it very easy for the member to engage, both in terms of how it's being published, but also creating opportunities for direct engagement in that content, then it's going to suffer a little bit. And I would say like the third thing, and we can get into that later, would just be the consistency around those two items. So much of what changes behavior so that you actually start seeing some adoption from your membership is like, hey, you got to be reliable. Like, you got to be known as like the reliable person in the room, right? Because like if the expectations are kind of changing and I can't recognize what it is that you're doing, then it's going to be really hard for me to become predictable in terms of engaging with it. So it's a bit of a two-way street.
Yeah, you're right. That broadcast mindset is like, we decide what we're going to make, we decide when we're going to release it, and you just better be there to catch it when we send it at you.
Yeah. And then in terms of the broadcast analogy again, is that if none of the programming is interactive, we're not creating an opportunity for some sort of involvement with the content itself, which is where like live program can thrive when it's done well, then those that are actually really looking to not just sit back on my own schedule and consume, but actually want to be involved because, say, like they're a very outgoing person, they're a proactive person, they want to bring forward their questions or thoughts into the conversation that's happening. You know, we want to make sure that we're not limiting and promoting for people to engage with not just the content, but really it's thinking about as engaging with the association in that way.
Yeah, content that invites you to engage, honestly, is what kind of cuts through the clutter. Like when in the current era where there's all the information that you could ever hope to receive and all of the content that you could ever hope to interact with, and actually more content than you want to interact with, like content coming at your face and you're like, stop it with the content, right? So in that era, the thing that is going to stand out is like where you feel like you're part of it. And we'll probably get into that a little more later.
So Breanna, is there any other points that folks should take into consideration when they're taking a step and looking back at the programming that they have right now when it comes to, hey, how can we improve the engagement on this?
Yeah, a lot of the time, we'll ask an association, "What are you putting out? And what are they liking?" And they'll be like, "We don't know," which is okay. But if you really want to get those results and it's not working for you, you really got to be digging down into the data, looking at your watch times and seeing what topics people are liking, what formats people are liking, and feeling like it's okay to pivot and adjust your strategy in favor of the data.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I think a lot of where the listeners will be in their journey is, again, we probably do some webinars, maybe we have a podcast, but if you're taking a look at, okay, how can we improve these things, being really good and diligent about not only pulling those analytics, but taking a look and trying to figure out, okay, what's the story behind the data? And that can be in baby steps with like, look, if you had one webinar that just actually seemed to really rise above the rest, it's really worth taking a step back and going, okay, why do we think that is? Was it just the topic itself?
Yeah, every time that there's a standout release that it just gets uproarious reception and all of your other things are crickets, there's a reason. It's not just because you know how on YouTube people will say like, "Oh, the algorithm favored this one thing." Like in the context of the way associations release content, like there's no
Yeah.
God sent winds of favor that just magically bring something up to the cream of the crop. It's happening for a reason.
Yeah, that's actually such a good point, and one of the many disadvantages of thinking that your programming shouldn't go on anywhere but your website, which is a very common strategic error. But I digress. There is no black box. There is no algorithm that you need to compete with and hope the algorithm gods are favorable to you and, deliver it to a favoring amount of people so you can scrape up some engagement to who knows who, because it's again not your destination, it's someone else's platform. What does that look like in terms of if you're doing it on your own website? Well, it's 100% you're in control, right? You're in control of how it's distributed, the amount that it's distributed, and the algorithm, if you will, is simply your members. So it's a really good opportunity to just dial into what's important to your members. So I guess on that note, it's like, what would be your recommendation if people are looking at the data and they're only seeing a couple of, they're early on, I imagine, or maybe they've been inconsistent with, perhaps there's many other variables that go into diagnosing why the content is suffering from low engagement, but they are seeing those couple data points with some releases that have been going well. What would be your advice to folks as they think back at those previous events or releases that have gotten poor engagement?
Let's talk about the scenario where members actually are having the opportunity to interact with and see your content, and you want to figure out if that content is well liked and the appropriate content, or if it's not. As you said earlier, your association members are the algorithm. It's not a black box, and they are paying to engage with you on some level, and you can talk to them more or less whenever you want. I don't know if any like associations are nervous about over polling their members, but you could just ask them. Like we know many associations that bring their content offerings like into their regular membership engagement touch points to be like, oh, what kind of content would you like to see? Or like, what releases did you like this year? Or what formats do you engage with? And they usually poll people also on their awareness level of the current initiatives. Like, did you know about our member hub? Like, are you familiar with the fact that there's content there? So yeah, you have that resource of your members to figure out whether they like something or not. Another thing to think about was something you said the other day as you were giving a speech at a conference. And I really like this point. What you said was members are humans first and they're members second. And associations commonly expect them to act differently than they themselves would act. So if you spend your days consuming content like on YouTube, on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on various podcast networks, and you're used to receiving content a certain way, that's most of the content that you're always interacting with is shaping your expectations far more than the occasional association content that you interact with. So think about what kinds of things you like to watch and things that your friends engage with, and try to dissect what it is about that content that's appealing to you. And it's probably going to be a similar story for your members, because they are people before they're members.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it doesn't matter if you're whatever industry you might be in. As associations, you think that of your members as really being the persona of that profession. And it's really easy to just kind of picture them just as their professional self, but ultimately they are a human, right? And we all kind of live a little bit of a duality, our professional persona and then our private persona. And some people are able to kind of mix and overlap those. But you have to be sympathetic to the association. It's like you're sitting in a position of trying to represent an entire industry. Like what a important and daunting task. The broader point is like, look, your members are really just people at the end of the day, and their, let's call it, human behavior and consumer habits absolutely overlap with what your expectations should be in terms of how they engage with you. And to the point of the talk that you're mentioning, it's like, if it's not easy, if it's not obvious, then people aren't going to jump through hoops to do what you would expect them to do.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this. It reminds me of that thing where if a student sees like a teacher in the wild outside of the classroom, they're like, my brain is broken. I thought they plugged them into the wall at night. Like, it's not like Johnny Member just like goes to bed and then he's like, time to be a member, right?
Right.
Yeah, he spends much more time being a human in the world than he spends in his professionalism member mode, right?
Right, like Mr. Howowski just like kind of goes in the closet.
Yeah.
Doesn't take off the suit and just sleeps standing up, because I can't think about him actually, being at like the local fair eating an ice cream cone.
Yeah, like he doesn't buy groceries. He doesn't, like live in a home or,
But hey, that's what membership looks like, right? At the end of these days, members are going back to their families and they're changing diapers or, looking after their parents, or maybe they're going bungee jumping. I mean, just people have all sorts of different personal lives.
Yeah.
But the thing that really connects them together is like, again, we're all being trained to some degree in terms of what our behavior is based off of, well, one, the culture that exists that we're all swimming in, as well as the technology, which is so integrated into our everyday lives. So based off of that, what do you think are the formats that best resonate with today's audience?
Well, we're seeing a lot of emerging formats. I mean, I guess just keep in mind that these trends are constantly changing, and the expectations are changing just as fast. So don't be afraid to like keep your pulse on what's happening and keep updating your strategy, because things that seem really cool can over time start to seem very old hat. Like lives are really having a cultural moment right now. People love tuning in and watching live streamers like in their consumer life. They love that interactive form of content. But at the same time, we notice that people are experiencing a lot of webinar fatigue, right? Especially coming right out of the pandemic when we were in webinar town, just floating in a sea of webinars. But still, there is some holdover where it feels like the traditional webinar is a little exhausting, but people definitely love the interactive aspect of the live format. And interaction is something that's always going to boost engagement. The opportunity to interact is something that's always going to stand out in a sea of content where many things are just broadcasted to you. So in that vein, some exciting ways to interact are doing like a live question and answer, something that really invites the audience to participate, doing a live watch party maybe for either a new release or even maybe to revitalize something in your back catalog that didn't get any attention. This could be a great opportunity if you've put a lot of resources into a particular asset and it's really too big to fail, and you really want to make sure you get attention to it. A watch party can be a really fun way to turn that into an interactive moment and really make it feel like a moment is happening in your community, something that they're not just going
Mhm.
to let like whiz past them
Yeah,
when it comes
we've
to
had
writing.
a client do that previously.
Yeah, yeah. They participated in 6 episodes of our documentary series, and they threw a watch party, and they invited all of the speakers that contributed to the episodes, and they sent them like popcorn buckets, and they had them all participate in kind of influencer marketing to extend the reach of the series. And it it really was a little moment for their association. I heard that it was really well received among the membership.
Yeah, I mean that's just clever, right? Because if you have something that's maybe like an annual initiative or biannual or something like this, like, and it is taking a fair amount of your budget, it's like why not double down? And like we say a lot around here, that content requires content, meaning that the content that you're making needs to be supported by marketing, and sometimes that marketing actually looks like content. Why not have something like that where you make the release of something into an event and try and involve everyone participating it, so that people are inclined to say like share their participation in something that's exciting on LinkedIn and pull in their network and have them point to like the release of whatever the piece exactly is. You're only kind of hedging your bets that there's going to be a reaction at the point of release.
Yeah. I mean, it really makes me think about how, for the association membership pipeline, what we're trying to do is we're bringing them in at the point where you're like, I have a value proposition for you. Like, you are getting stuff from me for your dues, and that's why you've joined. But what we want to get them to eventually, by nurturing them, is at the point where they're like, I'm part of this. Like, I'm giving back, right? And allowing that interaction like kind of pushes them along the pipeline sooner. Like they want to feel like this is our thing. Like everything that you do, instead of broadcasting it at them, like this is a thing I made for you. Like, yeah, that's how you get them in. But eventually it turns into this is our thing together. So they feel like a personal ownership in like everything that the association is doing.
Yeah, and that is a very real thing, right? Where say someone's a prospective member, they land on your website, maybe they are attracted there because you posted like a really good video, excuse me, about a topic that's very relevant to them. Let's pretend it's engineering, and it's something about excavation. However, excavation is changing in a specific niche of engineering. They're going to land on your website. They're going to see that you're producing insights that are very relevant to them as a professional. And they're going to see subject matter experts really giving them what they are desiring. And then if they become a member, to have them transition to being one of those subject matter experts just on a very human level. And the association is the thing that really made that happen for them, where they were perhaps early on in their career, but then to transition to being a subject matter expert on some sort of topic that's very relevant to their practice. Like that's going to really contribute to the retention of a member just by the sheer act of facilitating a level of fulfillment.
Yeah, I don't want to get crazy philosophical, but I have heard that on a humanity level, like those are the archetypes that we all desire to go through. Like we go from like the receiver to the teacher, and that's like the arc that people are going through, like when they go from child to parent, right? Like the next step is the give back, right? And it all like you're trying to reach that stage in your identity that's like your self actualization. So like once you start contributing to the membership, then you're like, now I have arrived. This this association is like a core part of my identity, and those people are like the ones that have reached the top of that pipeline are really the ones that are like powering your whole
Yeah.
operation.
Well, I'll take a step back further. I mean, that's really the powerful and beautiful thing about association shifting to accepting that they need to deliver on a better value proposition. And content is really just one of those main levers in which they can facilitate that. Because how is an association going to deliver content to their members and prospective members? It's going to be using subject matter experts. And one of the key areas that you're pulling those subject matter experts from is the membership, right? So when we take a step back and we look at what an association can do that no other competitor, if you will, can do, is membership. right? Like no AI, no, a company, you know, none of these things are going to be able to deliver what you can deliver as an association because you have the membership. You're going to be in a real strong position to be able to um, help facilitate that knowledge sharing that people are looking for. And in turn, being able to put a person in a position where they're acting as the subject matter expert, it's advantageous for you because, again, you're able to use this resource, which is your membership, to help increase the value of membership. But on a personal level, that member is going to get some level of fulfillment out of it. Fulfillment personally and fulfillment out of membership.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the crux of what engagement really is. It starts with the delivering of the value, right? But then it's more about the participation.
Yeah, once you get members to a place where they see themselves as really participating, um, then you're going to be looking at a member that is not necessarily in question if they're going to renew. So the more that we could get members not only engaging and say viewing and participating in the, let's say, delivery of the content. So like we just to be specific here, um, being a participating audience member in that content, but actually participating in the creation of that content by speaking as a subject matter expert. That's a really powerful thing for associations to strive for.
Oh, actually, that makes me wanna hit a tangent. Oh, okay, so frequently, we will interview association members that have reached this high level of, like, self-actualization within the association, like, the association is a core part of their identity. Those are often the members we're gonna go to first for testimonials, right? To talk about, like, why you should join the organization, why the association is gonna be valuable to you, because, like, those members have the most power behind their names. They're like the most famous in the space. They participate in the most things that they can talk to, right? So we'll talk to those members and they will say in their testimonials that like, yes, the association is what like helped me reach like self-actualization in the community. Like I love to give back. Like I love to give. I love to network. All my friends are here. Like I love going to the conference and like seeing my closest friends. I love like participating in like the creation of standards, right? And sometimes the association executives will receive that feedback and they'll say like, "Oh, hey, wait, like that's not content. Like should we not be investing in content?" Like they said that the content is not the thing that made them, but it actually was the content participation that led to that
Right.
level.
Right. Yeah, this is such a good point because it's kind of like being a fish in water, which plays on two levels. It's like, association executives, like they're people at the end of the day. I certainly don't blame anyone for not being aware of their consumption on a day-to-day basis and thinking like, say, people like you and I in terms of being hyper aware of consuming content. Um, and then on the flip side of that is that members aren't going to be really hyper aware of what content they're consuming, and maybe the participation will resonate with them in their mind, but they're not thinking of it as like programming and being part of the content calendar, and no one's really thinking about it on that level. So um to your point, we can't really expect members on a survey to, like, in the fill in the blank they put content, because it's not about content at the end of the day, right? It's about facilitating that value proposition. And at its core, it's access to information. And with what we're saying here, that there are formats that can invoke participation, both in the production, but also on the audience level. So, yeah, that's actually a very astute point that um, people don't end up looking for content as a word in your feedback, because people just aren't necessarily thinking about it that way. We all consume content, like it or not, all day long. We're not even thinking about it. Like if I go check what the news is this morning, I'm not saying, oh well, I'm going to start my day with some content.
Can't wait to hit that content.
Right. Like maybe very young people are very kind of aware about and use the word
And
content.
sometimes they'll even refer to themselves as consumers, which is a new thing.
Right, right, right. But regardless of whatever age you're at, like you are consuming content on a day-to-day basis. It's just we're not really taking stock of it if we go read the news or, we go check for updates on family and friends. We're not thinking of that as I think a lot of people aren't thinking that as consuming content.
Yeah, especially on the peer-to-peer level. Like, if you were to say, like, I scrolled down my feed and I looked at, "Oh, what's my mom up to? What's my sister up to? What's my aunt up to?" I wouldn't describe that time as consuming content, but that's what
Yes.
it was.
It's literally what it is. Yes. Yeah. So if your mom uploads a cute photo of her like going to the park and checking out the flower garden, she's producing content. Now, is your mom producing content? Like, no, your mom isn't, but at the exact same time, yes, she literally produced content because she posted it somewhere, right? So yeah, it's one of those funny things where you really have to know what you're looking for when you're kind of um, getting that feedback from folks. And if you are proactively trying to, get feedback over your programming, it's like you got to be very deliberate in terms of what you're asking people because they aren't going to be thinking about it necessarily the same way that you are.
Mhm.
There's a big difference between being a consumer and being a producer when it comes to well a lot of things, but
It definitely flips how you think about things.
yes, yes, exactly, right? So you're very hyper aware of how the sausage is made, right?
Yeah, it does kind of ruin social media for you. And among many other things, yeah. Like watching every like little bit of like TV, you're like, did I just see the mic? Or like, did his cup move? Like all that. Ugh. When I think about making content that is really going to engage association members, the pillar that I often think back on as my shining example, I guess, of when I really felt more engaged in a production that I've ever felt before, and I don't, and since that, like this production made me feel the more engaged than I've ever felt before or after. Was when I was a member of a local film association, and a person from the city. She was also an alum of the same program that I was at the local college. They produced this movie. It was called Indie Game the Movie. I think the year was 2012 for the release. But they interviewed four developers of indie games about what it was like to make their game and kind of like the struggles that indie developers go through in their place in the industry. And it just felt like it was all anyone was talking about. There was so much intersectionality in the communities I was in that were all talking about the production. There was the film association that I was part of. There was the college because that person was an alum. There was the video game community that I was also part of. There was so much ambassador engagement from all of those levels. Like the association was promoting it and talking about it. The college was talking about it. The gamers were talking about it. The people that participated in the documentary were all cross-posting about it. And it just like it felt like, wow, I can't believe that we're part of this and that this is happening. And it just felt like the only thing that was happening in the world at that moment. And we were just counting down the days to the release. And then they finally did the release, and it was like a simulcast that happened in like many theaters all over the place at the same time. So going back to the watch party, like it felt like we were all there for that like seminal moment, I guess. And I guess that takeaway for me for like injecting that kind of life into association content is the participation at every level. Like, who was everyone that was involved in it? Like, making it feel like our thing. Like, I wasn't part of it at all. I had nothing to do with it, but I felt like it was my thing. I was like, yeah, this is our movie because it's my association, because it's my like gaming community, because it's my college, because it's my town, right? It just felt like I was like somehow part of it. I was not part of it at all. Like. And I guess that's my shining beacon when it comes to engagement.
Yeah, actually, I remember when that movie was coming out. Actually, I wasn't a part of the association, but being from the same city as the couple that made the movie, I remember there being a tremendous amount of buzz about it. And just in popular culture, that it was actually percolating into that. It was kind of this weird moment of time where I felt like an obscure and niche topic like independent game development, like the public was being educated on this topic that it existed, and really brought like a sense of humanity to it, that and with several stories, and it really became a focal point of popular culture, at least for a couple months. But when I think back on what you said and how you felt, it's not surprising, because what that film was able to do is that it was able to bring together people, um, and tell something that was very inspiring to a bunch of folks that don't necessarily participate in popular culture, and shine a spotlight on them. So why would anyone not get excited about something that they love getting some level of attention, or at least appreciation? So in this case, it's like something as like playful as game development, pun intended. But if we think about that type of outcome for associations, the lesson there is that the industry that you're in and the people that make up your membership that are from that industry, they live these very nuanced lives where what they do, they can feel that it's very exciting and interesting, and people just dedicate their whole lives to something that is to some degree underappreciated by society, because society is just so wide, it's so rich. There's so many professions and companies that make up what civilized life looks like. The beauty of telling a good story is that you can really pull people together in a community and really celebrate something that's meaningful to them. And then you actually have the chance of making people outside of that community also appreciate something about what these folks are doing.
Yeah, that's absolutely my favorite thing about making content for associations, and it always has been since the very beginning. When people see something like on TV, it's like veneration of that thing, right? Like celebration of that thing. And then when people see it happen to their stories and like their industry, like you can see that the feelings that they're feeling are like, oh, I didn't think about myself like that. Like that how important my work is, like that I'm a hero, that I deserve to be celebrated, right? A lot of time what we're celebrating is like, look at this rich guy, like look how he consumes things, like look at his car, right? Like I feel like that's like oftentimes like what our culture is celebrating. And like I love to turn it back on like the people that are actually making the world operate.
Yeah, that's definitely a favorite part of my involvement with this company as well. Is one, I love a good story. Two, I love meeting people and hearing their story. I've been doing that for like nearly 2 decades. But to be able to do that kind of at scale across so many different industries is something that is just that I love about working with associations, because it doesn't matter what association you speak to, they all are made up of individuals that are genuinely interesting and lovely people, and really about thinking about using online programming as not just a way to just engage with members, which is a major benefit, but also really to humanize and scale to some degree those individuals, and not just like their insights but their stories. I'll take a step back. I'm just going to flag the association annual event. In a lot of ways, what we're talking about is facilitated by the annual event, or at least some associations do try and facilitate this. But like, here's some common examples. Like, we'll put out some awards to specific members and celebrate some milestones or successes that they've had, and that's wonderful. Speaking events, at those events, someone that's done an amazing study, or whatever the talk may be about, we're inviting them to participate in the content, if you will. And then in real time, the audience, can give some claps, and maybe there's some QA. But the funny thing about the event, and we've said it before, is that, well, it's a great thing and it's an important thing. it ultimately ends up being vaporware, right? Unless you're really putting a solid effort to try and extend that out and make it available to the entire membership and those that aren't members. But ultimately, that isn't really well thoughtfully executed. I can't blame anyone for that. It's something like the feeling that we should record this or we should publish this. And what you end up with is an award video that gets put out on YouTube, right? Or you get a series of sessions that kind of get stuffed away on the website somewhere and may or may not be sold. We do this at our events and it's somewhat vaporware, right? Because it exists for a moment in time, right? But really the ability to share that amongst the membership and really draw them in to really draw their attention and for them to engage with it ends up mostly because of the delivery and execution of it really suffers. But my broader point here is that if that is happening at the event because we think it's important and the people go to the event because they value it, why would we not apply that same mentality to our value proposition that we make available online?
Yeah, you're totally right. Like we know that that sense of community and celebration and unity that happens at the event is one of the most important things that we have. But we also know at the same time that a minuscule percentage of your association members attend that event. So we have to capture that lightning in a bottle and like find a way to preserve that energy and distribute it to the rest of the members.
Exactly. And frankly, the event just doesn't scale. So like from a purely selfish position, we'll say, if we're thinking about the association as an organization that's trying to achieve some level of success, we put all this time and resources and energy into putting a great event and we earnestly try and celebrate our membership, tell their stories, facilitate knowledge sharing with, say, speaking events. That can't scale. And it's very limited by the barrier to actually get someone to the physical event. If we think about, well, we have as we discussed in this podcast, the value of those stories and those insights, why would we want to limit their ability to be distributed to as many people as possible? In other words, why would we want to limit the reach of that kind of value if we know it has all these characteristics that make it very attractive to people, that could actually facilitate some level of fulfillment in terms of participating in it? But that's oft honestly where we're at in terms of how most associations are thinking about, or rather executing on their programming. It ends up being disjointed from the get-go in terms of being part of a cohesive strategy. And then therefore you get the symptoms of, oh, well, we're doing something, but the engagement isn't going so well. So Breanna, before we get out of here, what are some things that we could bring forward to the folks listening that will kind of frame how they should be thinking about assessing what they're doing currently? What's a good place? Maybe they're frustrated with kind of the results that they're getting. What would be your advice to them?
So imagining an association that is at that level where they're producing stuff and they feel like it's good stuff, but they're just disappointed with the level of engagement they're getting. We would say take a long, hard look and a full inventory of everything that you've made. Like get actual data on like what the numbers are on all of these pieces. Take a look at what topics are performing well, what topics are performing badly, what formats are performing well, what formats are performing badly. Look at who made that content for you. Like, was it a technical committee? Is it a person that you had to pay? Is it coming from an event? Are there barriers to gathering that content that are going to create problems, or it can only come at certain times? Then I would look at the psychographics of your members. Are the formats that you are providing making sense for the type of people that they are and the jobs that they have, their availability during the day? Are they able to watch a podcast? Are they able to attend a webinar? Do they not have a lot of time? Are they needing to view videos in the evening? Or are they ready at their desk to get content from you? And then after we look at all of that, We determine, let's lead with some formats that are most likely to hit for that demographic and psychographic, and then the topics that we know are resonating with the members. And we put it into a regimented plan that provides pipelines to that content. So we know that we're making the right content, and then we give that content the most possible opportunities to get in front of the eyes of the people who were intending to see it. And actually, the process that I just described, we call the program charter at Worker BTV, but those principles can work for anyone.
Yeah, I mean that's the process that we take here, and people are free to write down those notes and think about how it can be used to really assess kind of where they're at. But really, I think the advice here is that likely where you are at in your journey in delivering excellent programming to your membership is that it's probably looks like something like patchwork thus far. There was a day where we went, hey, we need webinars. So then we started thinking about what the heck that looks like. And then eventually someone was like, well, hey, we need like a podcast. Those are a thing.
I mean, there's not a framework that it all fits into, right? Like, I guess we're thinking of, yeah, like what you said, what associations often have is a patchwork that's like ground up, and we're looking for like a pipeline that's top down, I guess, maybe more.
Yeah, I mean, you want a holistic plan, right? That's going to deliver the best results in terms of having a really solid set of programming for your membership. In the process that we have, we really start with at the analytical level of taking stock of what's available in terms of sources, but perhaps even more important, what are the topics that are most relevant? And those two things go hand in hand. It can be really tempting to be like, how do I fix what I already have? And if that's your goal, that's totally fair if that's where you're at. But if the goal is to have like, we need to be world class in delivering programming to our members because we want our association to be world class in our industry, and we get that we have to improve this online value proposition, I would really advocate to the board, to all the stakeholders, like, hey, we got to take this seriously. And the way you can do that is by, say, laying out those steps that we mentioned earlier, by identifying those topics, what all the current sources of information that you can then turn into different formats. Like you mentioned earlier, you then come up with those original series that would best fit all those different topics. And then you can identify those subject matter experts and take all those pieces. And I probably missed a couple. You could jump in if you want, but the point I'll end with is that you want to think about that as an annual plan and how that fits in with everything else that you're doing, because there's probably a lot of opportunity to optimize it against those pieces that are really fixed, like your annual event. And it also allows you to think about like, okay, how are we going to market this stuff? Right? Or in as far as emails go, as well as should we be taking any sort of content that we're producing and cutting any of those pieces down into social clips to like drive traffic to it, especially if like they're high value items. So it needs to be really taken into a cohesive plan if you're really gonna hope to have good success with it. Unfortunately, just the build it and they will come mindset isn't really how it works. There's a bit more of a thoughtful nature to getting it effectively accepted by your membership.
It's important to have somebody on your team with the mindset that all of your content is precious and taking a serious look at inventorying everything you have and maximizing your opportunity to use every part of it to direct people toward the places where you've put the most resources. So I think about it, and maybe this is vulgar, but like a hunter using every part of the animal, right? Like you don't just cut out the steak and be like, hot, fresh steaks. And then the rest of the animal is just like, no, like decomposing in the background. Like you want to use those bones for stock, right? You want to use the offcuts like in the slow cooker or whatever, right? So like, and your biggest opportunity are those big rocks that you mentioned. So, you know, the process, the methodology of you place the big rocks and you put in the little pebbles and then you put in the sand, right? So your opportunity to spend the least money to get the biggest impact is at the point of collection, right? Like your events, like collecting all of that content and like planning how each of the pieces can be used. Or like every time you have a filming opportunity, like instead of thinking about like, oh, let's just gather content, think about like, how many initiatives could we gather content for? Could we get them to record their own promo at this point? Like all of the things that happen in the planning and in the writer's room in terms of your dollar spend are basically free compared to the cost that the execution will be later to pivot, right? To like try to make things when there aren't things, right? It's the like, once you've planned and collected all of those pieces, and if you have somebody on your team that's like, or outsourced, that's serious about archiving and tagging and like caring for these little content babies. That's how I think of them, because I'm that person, right? I'm like, ooh, my precious little contents, right? Like I care about every little piece, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I really get out of that is that if you're struggling with the performance of your content right now, like we mentioned earlier, probably the best place to start is to just take a step back, go into a planning phase. Good execution comes from good planning. And what that looks like in terms of developing programming is that you want to take stock of what are all those opportunities to create content around, because there's probably several pieces that happen across the year. Like I said, like you mentioned, rather, the annual event. And if we're not thinking about what those opportunities are and what we can produce from them, we're really going to pay for it later, because like you said, we already put a bunch of time and energy, for instance, in the sake of an event. But now we're saying, oh, well, a bunch of really relevant things happened to the event. Let's make videos about all those same topics. Well, we already did that. So we're kind of paying for it twice. And then we're having to, everyone's out of time these days. And now you're doing the darn thing twice. So there's just a lot of overhead and not actually taking the time to do the planning.
Yeah. And then worse, say you're not able to react at the level that you need to react because you've spent all your money, or you've put all your resources elsewhere, right? You haven't planned up front. Then people will be like, oh, like this content like just isn't relevant to me. Like I don't feel like I'm in the moment. I don't feel like we're part of it. Like it's just like, it's reactive, it's stale, right?
Yeah. 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 Without planning, you're not going to maximize your year. It's going to be more costly. It's going to be more time consuming. But getting back to the theme of this talk, which is really about the performance, if you're not taking a step back and thinking about the planning and kind of going back to the principles of what are these topics about that we're covering, and making sure that, hey, what are those things that are most relevant to our members? Maybe it's a mix of those things that are just always so important versus what's kind of hot this year of what's going on in your industry, trying to incorporate those things. And like we mentioned earlier, a little bit of experimentation based off of the data is important, but it all comes from having a really solid plan that's taking stock of what's relevant to our members. What are some formats that are going to encourage participation, both from the members as subject matter experts? What are those opportunities? As well as from the audience, what are some formats that we can put forward that's going to invoke some sort of participation as an audience member, and then have some variety in there. And I'll just finally mention is like, be consistent in when you're publishing, be consistent in terms of how you market, be consistent in terms of how these things are produced and delivered, because once people can get to a point where they understand they can rely on you, meaning that, oh, I know that my association does this thing and I expect it coming into my inbox like every other week, and I see the email or see the thumbnail, whatever it is, and I already have an expectation of what it's going to be about. That's where you really start to see that engagement tick up, because people aren't going to understand what they're looking at first. They got to get that first exposure, going on a limb and see what this thing's about, have a good experience, and then be like, oh, there it is again. Let me see what this one's about this time. It's just very ordinary consumer behavior, kind of touching back on what we were saying before, is that we do have to contend with expectations that people have, and really they're just consumer behavior. regardless if you see them as professionals of their industry.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I really think about how much routine plays into you starting to identify with that thing, or like bringing it into part of, I guess, what you consider part of your identity. I guess I just said the same thing twice, but in the way that someone is like, it's time to watch my stories, or like my show is on, right? Like that's what you want to get to a point with your releases where they're like, oh, it's time for my association release, right? And for some reason, I guess hitting that at a random cadence just doesn't play into that strategy in the same way as having it come at like a consistent time, and having the audience member having very, I guess, set expectations for the kind of information they're going to receive. Like to still delight and surprise them, but it has to be within that parameters that it's comforting, right?
Yeah, actually, maybe that's a good point to end on, is that for the different types of programming that you're going to be pushing out, that content should be consistent in terms of the member should have a good, pretty clear expectation about what is going to be talked about. Because if each, let's say, series that you're producing is so varied that they're not going to be able to form some sort of habit to watch it, because there's going to be a sense of, well, I have no idea what this is. I don't know what it's about. So if we take a look at just like our own behavior, say you're a podcast person, you like listen to podcasts, you came across a podcast once, you enjoyed it, and then you say you saw it a second time, maybe you're on Spotify, right? You probably went, oh, I heard that before. They talked about X. I really like that topic. Even if that topic has a lot of kind of subcategories underneath it, it's still under the umbrella of something that's, say, very interesting to you, right? Like say it's ancient history, Well, if it's something from Scotland, or if it's something from Asia, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be that hyper targeted about it. But we just play out this consumer scenario. I'm getting trained that this podcast specializes in this topic, so I already have expectations. So if I wake up one day and go, oh, I want more of that, I'm going to be way more likely to click back in and develop the habit of tuning in every week, perhaps, because things are being delivered consistently.
Yeah, and the consistency of the format kind of matters too. I was just thinking about, as you were saying that, there was this content creator that I found recently, going back to the secret sub-theme of video games that has emerged in this episode. He pretends to be a video game NPC, and he does like YouTube shorts. And he'll be like, oh, greetings, traveler. Like, would you like a sword or a bow? And then you like some sort of hijinks ensues, right? And I found that he made a whole bunch of other content. I didn't look at any of it. I was just like, more shorts, please. Like, I liked that, and I want more of that, right? So
that sounds amazing. You're going to have to send me the link over to that. But unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we have for today's episode. Breanna, thanks again for coming on to the podcast. Always so much fun talking with you.
I always love coming on.
Thanks for spending time with us on Association Amplified. Until next time, take care and keep inspiring your members.